Hey everyone, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. It's great to have you all here with me tonight. My guest tonight is someone I met at, someone the team met at Trans Pride here in Ventura. He was down visiting some friends and came to Pride, and we got to chat for a little bit. And I was just like, "You're new to transition. You seem really cool. You're trans masculine," which of course we want to show many more of those voices here. So, hey, you should come on. Luckily, he agreed. He's a 26-year-old Latinx trans man. He is an audio video tech for a university and just started a program in history last year. He came out as trans publicly in February of this year and has been navigating since. Everyone, welcome to the show, Gabe.
Hi, thank you, Emily. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here. Like I said, we need as many different perspectives as possible, and half of the trans population is trans masculine. So, I mean, half of the binary trans experience is trans masculine. So, we've got to make sure we get that representation up. We were talking a little bit behind the show, behind the scenes in the green room there, about the trouble finding trans masculine folks to connect with. And as we talk about community in a minute, we'll get a chance for you to express what some of the stuff that you've gone through. For the record, starting off with my favorite question, how did you choose your name?
Yeah, I actually love this question, and I don't get asked it like ever actually. Um, so I have not legally changed my name yet, and that's because I'm deciding whether or not to legally change my last name.
Mm.
I will start with my last name and then go end with the first because the first is much more fun. Um, I feel like my changing my last name to Lorca um, would make more sense because it has no ties to some of the family trauma and generational trauma that is associated with my given last name. And I chose Lorca because my given last name is Spanish and it also starts with an L. And Lorca is a Spanish province, a Spanish name, and starts with an L. But also because I am a huge nerd and I love Star Trek. And if anyone watches the Discovery series, there is a Captain Gabriel Lorca, and I thought that was great. And that brings me to my first name, Gabriel. I did not take that one from Star Trek. Uh, I my mother. This is the story she told me. She knew she was pregnant because she had a dream that the angel Gabriel came to her and said, "You are pregnant with a boy, and his name will be Gabriel." And she woke up, uh, told my dad, "I'm pregnant. We need to take a test tomorrow." And she was expecting a boy. They were both expecting a boy. She had had children prior, so she was like, "I knew when you were in my stomach that you were a boy. I could feel it." And then I came out, and my dad was a little confused, and my mother was confused, and she's like, "Are you sure that's the right kid?" And he's like, "I watched it come out." So they went with an obvious alternative. And when I told her I was trans and that I'm taking the name she originally meant for me, she was like, "Oh, so the angel was right. I did have a boy." And so that was pretty cool. Kind of like a full circle.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting story too. Then did that origin story make it easier to come out to your mom and to talk about it, and mainly for them to be able to accept it?
For my mother, yeah, it did. She yeah, she said when I was little, I would just cry a lot. I was a really sensitive kid, and I would cry and cry. And I said I didn't want to be a girl. Like I had two sisters, I have an older sister and a younger sister, and I didn't like the same things they did or want to do the same things they did. And I would just cry and say, "I don't want to be a girl. I don't want to be a girl." And she would apologize. She'd be like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And so, um, one time she did say trans. I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't know what was happening. But she had at one point mentioned that I remember now, of like maybe you're just trans and you don't know it. So um, when I came out to her, I was like, trans. And she's like, what's that? And I'm like, you said it once. She goes, oh, I did. And when I explained it, she's like, yeah, I think I did. I did think I said something like that. So for her, it was more just like, um, made a lot of sense. She felt bad though. There was this weird guilt that she felt like I should have come out cis male, and for some reason I did it, and she messed up that somehow because I was in there for 9 months cooking. So I don't know, but that I was like, I don't think it's anyone's fault. I think it's just science or something. But there you go.
"Ah, I had too much pizza and it messed the
Yeah,
chemistry."
exactly. Something like that. She also said she had champagne when she was pregnant with me, and I was like, I don't. That's a little deep. I don't know if that's.
Well, that's so interesting too. We're still just a long ways away from understanding what makes someone trans. You and I were talking before, in the green room again,
Mhm,
that we've seen the study where trans people's brains actually work and are built like the brains of the cisgender folks that they identify with. So trans women, their brains work and act like women's brains.
mhm.
And so I, I'm kind of hoping for the day soon where a kid will come out and they'll do a quick brain scan and go like, oh, no, no, that's gonna be a girl. Uh,
Yeah.
and then also, we're just a ways away from understanding what makes us trans, what causes the divergence in the development of the brain and the development of the body.
Mhm.
So, I
No,
mean,
I
we know
agree.
that we know with a decent amount of certainty that that's what happens, but we don't know why yet. Interesting science still to be discovered in the trans story.
Yep.
Um, so when was it that you realized you were trans? So you had these sort of things as a young kid, and you're like, I don't want to be a girl. This doesn't make sense to me. When did you finally apply that? Okay, I am trans, and I need to do something about it.
It was a long journey. Um, where I grew up, although outside of LA, it was kind of an anomaly. Um, uh, it's a smaller city of LA, but it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere in Mojave Desert. So it has like in a bubble. And I would say that I had very little idea of anything of the LGBTQA plus community um, growing up there. So it wasn't till I came to Portland and went to college, and it was it was the college my mother wanted me to go to, and I think she suspected this was one of the reasons. Is when I was like, oh, everyone's a little bit gay here, and so I guess that's okay, and that's when I came out as lesbian. And I was like, yes, I like women. This makes so much sense. The whole dating guys in high school thing was not working. Um, and so that was a big deal for me because I actually had like a year in denial. I was like, no, I'm making this up, and stuff like that. But when I finally accepted that, I was pretty happy for a little bit. I was like, yeah, this is who I am. This makes sense. Um, and then it wasn't until I was in my my most recent relationship that I would say things and express things about feeling uncomfortable, having a period, and being actually angry and about it, and feeling uncomfortable taking a shower, and that my partner at the time said, "Well, that sounds a lot like dysphoria," and I was like, "What's that?" and she said, "I think you should just look it up." And that opened this huge internet portal of what that means. Um, and I started reading other people like what dysphoria is about bodies, and then dysphoria about gender, and I was like, dysphoria about gender, and that's what started. I go to a therapist, and I always recommend a therapist to everybody, even therapists need therapists. And I was talking to my therapist about it, and she's like, okay, all right, well, how do you feel about that and this and this? And when I started saying this stuff, she's like, uh-huh. And I could tell, she was like, I heard this plenty of times before from other people. And she started giving me more things to read and more terms to look up and stuff. And finally, it was really hard to actually say it out loud, but finally, uh, February 2021, so last year, I told my partner at the time, I said, I think I'm a trans man. And once I said it out loud, it was like both very scary and also uh, I knew it was right.
Hmm. That's such a wonderful feeling, right? And such a terrifying feeling because it's okay.
It's so
Oh, wait.
scary. You're like,
So
I don't know what this means, but it's happened.
I don't know what it means, but I have a feeling that everything is about to change.
Yeah.
So was there a period for you of coming to terms with that and accepting it and figuring out how you were going to apply it to your life?
I'm still coming to terms with it. It's a process because I mean it's still very new to me. Um, but I mean you want to change the things that you don't associate with yourself, but you don't necessarily want your life to change, especially if it's a nice life. Um, you want everyone to still, treat you like they love you, and you want to still have, your hobbies and everything. But what I didn't expect is for so much change. 3 words, I am trans, and my whole world just went upside down. Um, and so, yeah, that it's I try to accept it because I see the positives, but I'm still recovering from kind of that initial like, this is what it means. Your life is different. It will be different. It doesn't mean it'll be bad. It's just it's going on a much different path than you were expecting, um, or could have imagined. Because I mean, I've never done it before. I've never been trans before. So.
Yeah, that's the way it is for us. Yep. The one thing that I will say that comes of this, we get really good at adapting to change.
Hmm.
Um, Once you change your gender, that's sort of the biggest, scariest thing that you've had to change in your life. And once you go through that and you're able to navigate it, okay,
Hmm.
it's sort of like nothing else can shake me.
Right.
So just know that
Yeah.
once you get through this and once you're really comfortable with yourself, then it's all smooth sailing from there. Oh, if
Good. That's
only.
what everyone says. I will say, each month is a little easier. And sorry if you hear some like water. My dog got thirsty.
I think we're doing okay with the sound. The chat will let us know if there's sound issues. Um, let's just go ahead and move in further into your coming out story. So you said you came out to your spouse first. How did you approach that, and what were some of those initial conversations like?
Yeah. So, yeah, my uh, I was really nervous because it wasn't just I'm changing my name. Um, it's I'm changing my identity, um, my body, and I don't know if what I'm going to become. You know, hopefully more myself, but if that's going to be someone that you'll be attracted to, um, and I don't know, my interests in life might change. Not necessarily like obviously I always love baseball and I always love Star Trek, but I'm rethinking my career now. I'm rethinking my place in the world. I'm also becoming a man, which changes how people perceive me and how people interact with me, and just there's so many big things and so many little things that really a partner would notice and be affected by, and you know, a couple folks had said like, well, if they love you no matter what, they'll stay with you. But it's more than that. I mean, it's you're asking this person to go through this huge journey with you, and you have no idea where you're going or what you're doing. So I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified because I knew when I said those words, there was no going back. And although she was and still is extremely extremely supportive, and loving, uh, we realized it was a lot, and it was putting stress on the relationship. And so that was one of the biggest changes that I was afraid of and wasn't expecting, but it happened.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting to think about that. I was in a straight cis relationship, and started to go through everything and realized I needed to transition. And in that scenario, there's no chance. Like she wasn't a lesbian. She's not going to be attracted to women. And it's just interesting that starting out in a lesbian relationship, that the same holds true. You're attracted to who you're attracted to,
Mhm.
and if your partner changes, you can still love them and want to support them. But like you said, there can be too much that changes for that person to still be in it in the same way. And in fairness, if they want to be fair to you and give you what you need, they have to be all in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also recognizing like our personalities, and I'm a very extroverted person, and I wanted to jump all in and cover myself in all the colors of the rainbow and go all for it. And it was so emotional for her. And the best way I could say is that I was just watching a movie on Netflix. It's actually a pretty good movie. I forget the name now, but there was a quote in there. He said, "Have you ever loved somebody so much you never wanted a single part of them to change? Never wanted them to change." And when he said that, I was immediately brought back to that moment when I had told her that I was going to change physically and mentally and all this kind of stuff. And she looked, I looked like I broke her heart. And that was probably how she felt. She loved me so much the way I was. She didn't want me to change, and and I don't want anyone to be upset. Like, oh, well, I guess that love wasn't enough. But I mean, just imagine someone in your life that you just adore everything about them, and they come up to you and say, "I'm gonna go on this journey, and there's gonna be a lot of changes." And it's not like puberty in our teens, where it lasts pretty much a decade. This is fast. I've only been on testosterone 5 months, and my voice went from a mezzo soprano to a low baritone. It's very fast. I smell different. I sound different. I act different. My tastes in food have changed. And so asking someone to come on that journey, um, it can be hard. And so she said, "I don't want our relationship to strain with this. Let's be friends, and I will support you in that way." And I realized that she was actually giving me the space that I would need as the type of person that I am to figure out where I'm going.
Mhm. And that's so important to talk about too, is that we need that support. We need that partner to stay with us and to like prove to us that we're still lovable and all of these good things.
Hmm.
But there is a lot of space that we need to be able to explore our new selves fully
Hmm.
and release the chains of holding back who we're not supposed to be, this persona that we've put out there and tried to cling to as best we could. There's a lot to letting go of that. There's a lot to um, learning how to be you without those constraints. And
Hmm.
then as things actually just change because of the hormones or because of this, you allowing yourself, I feel like it's really difficult to fully come out and fully be you in the context of a relationship that's already established. There are plenty of
Right.
people that do it and plenty of people that are really successful at it. But I don't I think it's important to be able to look at it as a positive thing instead of just
Hmm.
a loss. I think that's the first thing we go to. Like, I'm losing this relationship. I don't know when I'm going to find another one that's going to love me, support me, all that kind of stuff. But I think embracing it and going, okay, this is the opportunity to truly test everything and try out who I want to be, to take it to the extremes, and to find out where in the middle I'm going to end up.
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, every relationship, whether romantic or not, is different. And the most important thing is that there's constant communication, because we are best friends, and I know she's always there for me, and that's something that I wouldn't want to lose because she's known me for so long, and it's very important to me. So yeah, I agree.
Hmm. Yeah, and I wonder if she'll ever be in a point of giving you pointers of like, okay, now that's a feminine behavior, you know, that you probably want to do more of this and butch this up a little bit.
uh, I've always been quite masked. I think it actually was really funny is when I was still identifying as a lesbian, she would say, "Gosh, sometimes you're just such a dude," you know, and I'm like, sorry, and now I'm like, yes. Before testosterone, I was told this, haha, you know.
Hmm. It's sort of similar to like people always telling me that you know, I look so similar to my mom that if you put a dress on me, I would be my mom, and it's just like, well, now that you mention it. So was she the hardest person for you to come out to?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Um, m- there was a friend I was worried about, a friend I had been friends since I was 16 years old, and she grew up in a very religious household. I remember when I told her that I liked women, we barely talked for like a year, and that was rough. But she so important to me, that I just kept that communication open, and um, yeah. And when I came out to her as trans, and we talked about it, she was like, makes sense. And so that was probably the most surprising. Well, I was hoping everything would be okay, but it was probably one of the most surprising reactions that I got was this person who had known me since I was 16. So this is probably one of my longest known friends, saying, that makes sense, yeah. Um, and so I've been visiting her as often as I can so that she could see the changes and not be, too scared. But yeah.
So she had a hard time accepting that you were a lesbian.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
And we never really said it out loud, but like the moment that I said it, she just kind of like was like, "Oh, hmm," and it made her really uncomfortable, and she didn't know how to handle it. And then we pretty much didn't talk much for like an entire year, and then finally we reconnected, and she had that time to digest that. Um, but we come from that same weird little town, and it's a very sheltered town. And the moment you get out, which she has been able to do, you're like, wow, there's like a whole new world, and I was focused on weird stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
I almost thought for a second that she was afraid when you said that I like women, that the next line out of your mouth would be, "I like you. Can we
Oh,
date?"
yeah. No, 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 no. We were like siblings. Definitely. Just we spent most of our days just making videos because she wanted to be an actress, and I liked video editing. And now she's a model and a photographer, and I do video editing. So it worked out. But yeah, no, that probably would have scared her.
Have you had any particular struggles with you know, the environment around you there in Portland? I know it's a very LGBT friendly space, but have you experienced any struggles in acceptance in either your school or in your area?
Yeah, that's a good question. Portland is a very queer friendly city. It's actually easier to be queer here than it is to be Hispanic, which I am Hispanic, and so that's that that's interesting. I think the one thing that's the hardest for me is bathrooms, and I think that a lot of trans folks can agree that bathrooms is very hard. When I started at school, so I'm in a grad program. When I started, right before my first day, I emailed my professors and I said, "Hey, I know my name is this on the roster, but I'm trans. I go, by Gabe, he him pronouns. I hope that's okay. We can obviously talk about it, whatever." And all my professors were like, "Yeah, that sounds great. I'll change your name on my roster." And so I started grad school as Gabe, which made a huge difference in my relationships with my new classmates and everything. But work was a little I didn't I work so I work at a university as well, and I feel like at least in my personal experience, higher education tends to be a little more accepting because their students really run the show. So if you have students who are you know, really advocating for queer rights, then that is something that the staff and faculty must be aware of, and also advocate for, to create that safe space and community for the students. So that's one of the reasons why I love working at a school, or higher education schools. I can't say that K through 12 is all like that. Um, and so when I came out to my boss, who I already knew was very much queer friendly, and he was like, absolutely. And by the next day, everything that my name was attached to was changed to Gabe by the next day. It was so fast. It was actually too fast for me. I was like, oh my goodness. Then he had already gotten in touch with HR, with IT department, with everyone, and just had already, like, I walk in and he's like, I've already ordered you a new name tag. I was like, wow, this is so, wow, that happened so quickly. Um, and yeah, it was okay. There was a couple of folks who had some questions, but I didn't mind answering questions. I like I said, I work at a school. I love education, and I feel like the safest space to ask questions, it should be a school. So I had no problem being like, oh yeah, this and this, and they were like, okay, all right, cool. So that was great. And yeah, Portland's pretty queer, but bathrooms suck. They should be all gender, just period.
It's so funny. I have such a weird relationship with it because, you know, before transitioning, I saw stuff of like clothes for cross dressers. So clothes that were feminine styles that were made to fit men and things like
Mm,
that. And, you know, the gender neutral bathroom thing. And it all kind of hits me the same of like, no, I'm a woman. I want to wear women's clothes. I want to use women's spaces. I don't want to use spaces that are made for people who aren't women that, you know, like, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, I
And
do.
so it's just a really interesting thing for me. I appreciate a gender neutral bathroom because it's just easy to get in and not worry about. But, you know,
Mhm.
I feel, I just feel with my people when I'm able to use a women's restroom and do it without fear. There's
Yeah.
still sometimes I forget where I'm at in my journey now. It's been a few years, but there's still times where it's a little bit of a hesitant. Like, am I going to get clocked? What's their feeling going to be? But it's still, you know, I couldn't possibly imagine using a men's restroom, and
Yeah, that's the thing is women's restrooms are nicer, and everyone has their own private space, right? And men's restrooms are disgusting for the most part. And if there is a stall, there is one, and sometimes it can close or lock. And that's kind of like, I think I would prefer all gender restroom only because they have more stalls and because they tend to be cleaner. That's why. Uh, Also, there's this unspoken thing where if you're using the stall, then you're taking a number two. You're going to poop,
Mhm.
and so I'm like, okay, fine. Then I just poop a lot because I am not. I'm not going to use that. I can't at the moment. So there, you guys can just think that I'm pooping. I'm really on TikTok. It's fine. Um, But when there's one stall and it's already being used, then there's really nothing else you could do but tell your friends, you know what, I think I'm gonna head out and I'm gonna go home because someone is actually pooping, and that could be 40 minutes to an hour. So
True, very true.
a little bit of TMI, but that was like great. This is I got all this great stuff and I got this bathroom. That's, that's my trade off.
What other kinds of things have you struggled with through your transition? What have been some of the keys that are hard for you?
um yeah kind of there's two things that come to mind. One is like how I'm perceived now as a guy. I never had a problem with my height, ever. I still don't have a problem with my height. I am confidently 5'3". My whole life I wanted to be taller than my mother. I'm taller than my mother. So I've achieved that goal. I don't mind being 5'3". I'm healthy, right at the moment, and I'm happy about that. But the as a lesbian, 5'3" is fine. As a guy, people like to remind you that you're short a lot, all the time. You're like, I get it. I'm short. It doesn't bother me, but it bothers you. you know? And so that's been just like a constant, like, you know, slap in the face. Like, oh yeah, well, you're kind of short. I'm like, should I not have transitioned then? Like, is there a height requirement, like a ride? Like, I don't. So that was a bit surprising to be brought up a lot. The other thing is obviously genitalia. Well, you're a guy, but I know, I'm aware, I'm see myself, so that's been, just those two things being brought up to me a lot by other people,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I'm glad you're invested. I don't know. And then the other thing is kind of like some things that I didn't really know, some thoughts I didn't really know I had, growing up. I will think something and be like, that's too feminine, and it's not coming from a place I thought it would, like dysphoria. It's coming from um, uh, my father's idea of what a man is, and so like uh, he's a bit more old school. I don't talk to my father, but if he's a bit more old school Mexican. He When I would play the piano, he would say things like, "Well, if you have time to play the piano, you have time to get a job," you know. And I was like probably 15 or 14. I just was hanging out in the living room playing the piano, and he had told me he liked wrestling as a kid, and his dad was like, "Well, if you have time to wrestle, you have time to get a job." So like this kind of idea that you shouldn't have extracurricular activities, you shouldn't be feminine. He hated Prince. He constantly said how much he hated Prince because he wasn't a man. He was too girly and all this kind of stuff. And these kind of little things that had been hearing since I was a kid, slowly coming up in my own, because I didn't get to grow up as a man with someone else teaching me how to. I'm an adult and I have to just figure this out and read a lot and ask people questions. So, and very quickly, I have to do it in a very small amount of time. I don't get 18 years to figure out what it means to be a boy to a man. I have, a very small window. Uh, I mean, the rest of my life, but still, it's very fast. And so it took me a long time to say I like the color pink. Like, and you had asked me, the thing is, say your favorite colors. Well, gray is one of my favorite colors. And then I was hesitant. I was like, I shouldn't write pink. I can't write pink. I can't write pink. It's too girly. And I'm like, wait, really? Really? It's a color. Write pink. I like pink. And it's just those little things. Or I listen to a certain song. I'm like, that's too girly. And I'm just hearing my father's voice in my head. And that's been really hard for me to just be like, okay, my dad had his own trauma from his father of what, a very toxic masculine idea. And that's not something that I want to continue, but it is affecting me, even though I haven't had any connection to that in a decade, so
Mhm.
that's been really interesting.
Yeah, that is a fascinating part of it. Whether it be our parents or society as a whole, we don't really realize to what point that basic general societal opinion dictates our lives, until we try and do some of these things and see that. And yeah, I haven't been able to. I have to some degree adopted different music tastes, or at least broadened my musical tastes,
Hmm.
and really liked getting into some of the female singers. I'm finally a Taylor Swift fan, and things like that. But I still listen to really hardcore music,
Hmm.
very testosterone fueled, masculine, double bass kind of music.
Hmm.
And, I still have those moments of like, oh, I shouldn't be listening to this. Uh, some of it is, societal. Some of it's what we actually like, and some of it's just sort of what we're used to. So I try to kind of cut myself some slack on that, but yeah, it can be really hard to figure out those things and navigate that of like, you've got testosterone going, and testosterone's a very powerful drug. And so you've got
Yeah.
changes happening fast. And so you're like, well, I've got to catch up to that and present the right thing.
Mm,
On the flip side of that, estrogen works very slow, and if at all. And um, to be able to pass and feel comfortable in some of these spaces, sometimes you have to cover up sort of what's happening physically with some of your mannerisms and your voice and things like that. And I feel like
mhm.
both of us have a lot of pressure on ourselves to, like you said, take that crash course and learn to be our new gender quickly. And you don't, you don't have an understanding of how you are gendered through your life, how
Mhm.
subtly it happens, and how it's a slow buildup, and it's just all of these little things that add up, until you try and change it quickly, and then you're like, you just feel completely lost.
Yeah, you're learning things about yourself you didn't know, and then you're trying to unlearn them
Hmm.
at the same time. Um, yeah, it's overwhelming sometimes. Sometimes I have to take a break and just watch Netflix.
Yeah, and you definitely have to give yourself that permission to indulge in the guilty pleasures that you might retain from your past life, because there's a great deal of, if nothing else, comfort in that, in the familiarity.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, let's get into let's go ahead and throw this one at you, our very ethereal question. What does transition mean for you? What does it look like for you on a deep level?
Honestly, not trying to be something I'm not. Yeah. Growing up, I have two sisters. I have a big sister and I have a baby sister, and they're both very girly. Um, and I was put in the same dresses as them. I was put in the same uncomfortable 90s shoes as them. Um, and then, I started to go through puberty, and my older sister, who's 10 years older than me, is like, I'm going to take you under my wing, and we're going to do hair and makeup and that kind of stuff. And I just felt like a clown. And I felt like I was just acting, constantly acting, wearing all the right things, wearing heels, jeans, and a flowy shirt, and long hair. I had long hair to my waist. And I was constantly felt like I was acting, and it goes beyond just the way you look. And that's where it starts to dig deep. It's not just that I was acting as in I was putting on a costume. I was acting like I was also pretending to be more feminine because I felt like that's what guys wanted, and other girls are doing it to get guys, so I'll do that to get guys. I'm going to do that because that's what these people do, and I want friends. So um, it was just constantly pretending and pretending with interests and pretending. And when I came out as lesbian, that was a huge relief because I was like, oh, I guess I could be butch lesbian. I can be more honest. Like, I like driving my truck, and I like building stuff, and I like sci-fi, and things like that. Um, but then I was still, after I settled in that new feeling. I was still pretending. I was still um, conscious of certain aspects of femininity, or how I'd act around certain people. That's the thing, is like energies. Like, I would, around men, I would want to just hang out and be myself, but then I was like, no, I'm technically a woman, so I just need to be a little bit more, like, I need to giggle, or I need to, like, be a little more submissive, or I need to give them more space, or like, wait, and then I'm like, wait, what? Why do I need to give them more space? What is happening? So transitioning to me was finally me saying, okay, that was all just bullshit. um Sorry. That I didn't, that wasn't me. I was constantly trying to be what I'm not. And if it means being a guy, yeah, that's part of it, but it's really just like me being like, I don't actually like that. I don't like being like that. I don't like saying those things. I'm not interested in that. I'm actually interested in this. And no, I'm not going to act like this around you. I'm just going to be myself. That's and although it's a journey to find yourself, because now you're navigating, like, what it's like to be a man, and then what it's like to be a trans man, and all that kind of stuff. Really, it's just saying enough for all of it, not just gender, not just identity, all of it. um, I'm going to go into the store, I'm going to buy that shirt because that's the shirt I like, not because everyone else is wearing that shirt. I'm gonna buy that one. And that's what it is. It's like being honest with myself to a fault.
I love it.
To a fault. Too much. Too honest.
So, I have some questions about, how far along are you in your process, and have your goals changed or shifted as you've gone through? I know you're fairly new to it. As you've stepped into this new role, what have you done as far as like setting out a plan, or are you just kind of taking it day by day and feeling what what feels good, what you kind of what comes organically as far as things that you want to do, whether you want to go down surgery routes or other things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing about, you know, uh, to do when you're questioning whether or not you're trans, or when you've accepted that you're trans, is to reach out to other people, or read a lot, and follow other trans folks, and on YouTube and stuff like that, because that helps a lot. Kind of get an idea of um, what these different steps are like, and which ones you feel you identify with most. And that's what I've been kind of doing over the past 2 years, is just reading and reading and reading, and watching a lot of videos, and following a lot of other trans folks, and seeing their stories, and like what steps they took. I started testosterone this year on April 29th, so at the end of this month, it'll be 5 full months on testosterone. And it is fast. You're right. Testosterone is a drug. It is a fast drug. Um, I was a mezzo soprano before, so it's very high voice, and now I am a low baritone. And a friend of mine's been is a music teacher, and he's been seeing how low my voice can go, and he's been having a fun time with that. Um, and so it's quick. But then I start to think, like, what things else I want, right? Surgeries and stuff. Definitely top surgery. That has been giving me a lot of dysphoria, because um, I just want to go swimming. I just want to take off my shirt and go swimming. I really do. That is just been a huge barrier for me, because I just went through a whole summer as trans, open to everyone, and I felt like I couldn't go swimming, and it was just very heartbreaking. Obviously, there are things you can wear, but for me, it was a little bit. It played into this dysphoria, because I was like, I have to hide this thing, and everyone could tell I'm hiding this thing. So, am I really hiding the thing? Am I really? So, definitely want that surgery. I actually have an appointment with my doctor next month to hopefully ask her about those steps. My goal would be next year to have that surgery. Um, as far as bottom surgery, I have done a lot of reading and a lot of research, and it seems to me like that's not something that resonates with me um, personally. And a lot of it is, I love science. I grew up. My mom really wanted me to be a doctor, and I did a lot of reading on science, and I took a lot of anatomy courses and all that kind of stuff. So I look at everything very scientifically. And from what I personally was seeing, is that there is still a lot of research that needs to be done.
Mhm.
And the idea of the amount of surgeries and complications, I felt like that was way more energy than I currently have to give.
Mhm.
Um, right now, everything works. There are no complications, thank goodness. So I'm just gonna count my blessings. My fear, and this was something another trans person had said in a video, was that they felt that it would give more dysphoria, because they would look down and be reminded that it was an attachment, and they might not connect with that. And there was
Mhm.
someone else who had written that they might not connect with it. And and stuff like that. So I felt that that resonated with me. Everyone is different. Everyone is different, and obviously baby steps, because surgeries are a big deal, and also like who's going to pay for it, and like when's it going to happen, like really. But just for me personally, right now, I felt like that. I can wear a good pair of jeans, and nobody would notice anything.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy with that.
Forgive me, I'm not as studied on testosterone as I should be in the position I'm at here, but is a hysterectomy something that is necessary, or at some point does it sort of become unnecessary because of what the testosterone does for you?
It's not necessary. I that being said, I don't know what menopause would look like. And obviously, there are only so many trans folks that have actually gone through all that in a very long. I mean, there's only so many studies of trans folks that are older who have started younger on testosterone, and but I don't know what menopause would look like. And testosterone, everyone reacts slightly differently, and also your dosages are differently based off preference and health. I mean, it thickens your blood, it rises your blood pressure. So your age, it comes into a factor. If you're older, you will not be, hopefully, if you have a good doctor, not be giving as high as a testosterone level as someone who's younger. That being said, because of all of those things, your period might not stop. And that is something that a lot of trans folks, I think every single trans man that I can think of that I've talked to is like, the period needs to stop. And no more. And so a lot of folks will have a hysterectomy so that that can stop. Um, or, I mean, besides maybe they're like, I don't need this, I don't want this for dysphoria reasons, but also wanting the periods to stop, lower their chances of getting pregnant, also lowering chances of different cancers. um, that plays a factor as well. I probably, if I did get any other surgeries beside the top surgery, that's the one that I would get, because personally I don't want a chance of having a period or getting pregnant. But that being said, some trans men have had pregnancies or don't mind pregnancies, so that has nothing to do
Mhm.
with being trans.
So what are some of the tips and tricks that you've learned for finding yourself and for feeling like Gabe on days when maybe you've got a little bit of dysphoria or you're kind of struggling?
Oh yeah. Uh, you gotta be patient with yourself. I gotta be patient with myself. It's so funny. It happens so fast, but not fast enough. Because but honestly, the biggest trick that I've done is is I've taken little videos of me talking every couple weeks. And what there's a moment where I'm just like, I look in the mirror and I just see a girl, or I feel too girly, which there's no such thing, but you're just overwhelmed by like, no, this is not happening, it's not working. I listen to one of those videos and I see myself then, and just in 5 months, I go, whoa, well, wait, no, that there is a difference. There is a difference. I've definitely come a long way. Wow. Um, or I talk with my friend, the friend I mentioned who likes hearing how low my voice can go. He'll tell me. He'll be like, "Oh no, these are the things that I noticed that have changed and are different." And when he says that, it makes me feel better. I'm like, oh, okay. So all this work and all this all these emotions and all these struggles have been paying off. So that, yeah, I recommend taking little videos and photos and stuff, and marking your journey so you can look back and be like, okay, it's working.
Mhm. What are some of the biggest hurdles that you've had to overcome, and how have you overcome those, both internally or externally along your transition?
Yeah. The the breakup was really hard on me. It was really hard on me, and um, I was very lucky that uh, she was kind enough to talk with me through that and help me through that. As far as any questions I had for her, but also I had to take care of myself. So I saw my therapist a little more. I said, you know what, I need to, if I've gone through this, I got to keep going. And so I had to reconnect with myself and like, what do I like? Who am I again? And one thing that I hadn't done in a very, very long time was dance. and so I signed up for dance again. And I'm not as good as I remember being, but it's a space where like I don't have to think about my gender. Um, I just have to focus on like following the moves as quickly as possible, and um, it's really nice to have that distraction, but that break, um, to just be myself for a moment, and not have to, remember how hard it is to be trans, or how far I've come, or if I'm trans enough, or like what does being trans mean, like, um, yeah, that's outlets, friends, um, interests, hobbies, just doing those things have been how I've been able to get through the breakup, and then also being like, okay, I am trans. Sometimes it's really overwhelming and hard, and yeah, that's really that's the best thing I could think of to do, was just to try to have some fun.
Mm. At this point, is there anything that you feel you've been able to accomplish or to do because of your journey?
Yeah, I was just talking about this to someone recently. I was saying trans folks have this kind of gift of being able to, um, focus on what it's like, or what it means to be who they are, what it means to be a person in space, in society, and in time, that not a lot of folks have the opportunity. And I'm saying it because it is an opportunity to really say, like, oh, um, my voice is deeper. And so when I spoke to that person, it came off a little more aggressively, and they got nervous and scared. And I noticed that right away. And so I've corrected myself, and I noticed, like, okay, I can't get really frustrated and have a deep voice because I seem dominating. And I cannot say that, um, I can't say that a lot of cis men, have that ability to see that difference between having a higher voice and being non-intimidating, and then suddenly having a deeper voice and being seen as intimidating. And that's a gift to me, to be able to see right away how these things change, and how I can analyze myself, and focus on my energy when I approach someone, and focus, and so I'm like, wow, I really care, I think a lot about my mental health. I think a lot about my physical health, in different ways. And I think a lot about, like, uh, uh, sexual health, and kind of stuff that I brought up to other folks, and they go, wow, I never really thought about that. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's in my face every day, because I'm constantly checking myself and editing myself and trying to be the best version of my be, and the person I want to be. So I'm, that's just it. I'd like to call it a superpower, because I hope that all this work I'm doing, will you know, make me the best version of me. I don't know.
Hmm.
And so I just think that trans people, at that, it should be seen as a gift, that we get to look at ourselves and other people in a different light.
Well, we did talk earlier, I think maybe it was before the show, about how being trans and having and going through all this and having to deal with this big monumental change allows us to be better about accepting change and dealing with it. And there are so many things like that, like you said, sort of the empathy that we have for
Mm-hmm.
others and how our presentation, our approach affects them, and so many other things that it's just like, yeah, being trans is sort of a superpower. Like you've just hopped over this fence, but you've got this understanding of both sides that
Mm-hmm.
no one else has.
Yes, absolutely.
I wonder if this next question will be different enough for you to come up with a different enough answer. But just let's just throw it out there. What is your favorite thing that you've learned through your journey, either about yourself or the world around you?
Favorite thing I've learned about myself and around me. Um, I've learned that I'm tough. I was always called, like, emotional growing up, because I wore my heart on my sleeve, and I watch a lot of rom-coms, but I've learned that I'm really tough, and that I just keep going because I want to, and I'm stubborn. I'm very stubborn, which is both good and not so good sometimes. So that I've learned to like accept that as a good thing though. And then one thing I've learned about other people is um, there are people out there who tend to be mean or who are hurting, so they hurt others. But I've learned that people can really surprise you, and that people can be really kind, and that people just um, a lot of people just really want to learn. And they don't have the tools or the language, and and it doesn't mean that it's all of our responsibilities to teach, but I think that there should be places that those people can go to learn. And I love education. I love being a part of education. The education is what I want to get into. I want to teach whatever that looks like for the rest of my life. So when people come and ask me, I'm like, yes, let's do it. Let's talk about it. That's something that I love. Um, but that's probably been like my favorite thing at work, at school, and just my daily life is when somebody like gathers up. You could see it gathering up the courage to ask me like, "What does your pin mean?" You know, or because I wear a little trans pin sometimes, or they say I had someone ask me, you know, where do you get your binders? Like they were so nervous, you know, and I was like, actually, I like this, you know, and it made me it personally made me excited because they were saying I have this question and I'm trusting you and putting myself out there that maybe you can have an answer. And what I think is if you don't have an answer, I mean, it isn't our job to educate, but maybe if you have like a resource they can go to, be like, oh, I know this site that's really cool. You might want to check out. And that can answer your question. Um, yeah, so that's been kind of cool.
Something more we need to do for the transfers. Okay, okay, yeah, the education side of the site. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still working to try and get somebody to help us build out the resource portion. So we've got a long way to go. Um, as we wrap up this section, at this point in your transition, what advice do you have to pass on to younger closeted trans folks out there?
My gosh. Be patient. Be patient. Be very. People say this, but like it's true. Like you have to be patient with yourself. It's not the end of the world. It's the beginning of something, and it's scary because it's the beginning and you don't know what's gonna happen. That's really what it is. It feels like an end, but it's actually a beginning, and it's just scary. And you you're not alone. I How many times I said it's so lonely, it's so lonely, it's so lonely. It's not. It is not lonely. Um, we just have to work a little harder to find our community. But once you find it, you realize it's not lonely. It's not lonely. I found Emily and I felt instantly less lonely. And I go, wait a minute. There's this thing called a transverse. There's an app called Lex, and I found a lot of queer and trans folks on there to connect with. Lex. And there's Instagram, there's TikTok, there's Facebook, and yes, sometimes that can be a little disconnecting because it's a screen. But there are groups on there that meet, you know, in local areas. If you're lucky to have a local area that groups like that meet. I'm very lucky being in Portland, I have to admit. But um, just because you have to work a little harder, you're not alone, and you have to be patient with yourself. Absolutely.
Well, Gabe, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. Thank you.